video we'll define modernism, consider the social and historical factors that led to modernism, identify significant modernist authors and poets, identify the major characteristics of modernist literature, and define stream of consciousness and interior monologue. Ezra Pound, who was kind of like the talent spotter for the modernists, said make it new. And look, after we've considered the modernist poets and authors, I'll be interested to see if you think they were successful. Did they make it new? So, what is modernism? Modernism refers to the radical shift in aesthetic and cultural sensibilities evident in the art and literature of the early 20th century, especially post-World War I. Modernism marks a distinctive break with Victorian morality. Modernist authors presented a pessimistic picture of a culture in disarray. This despair often results in apathy and moral relativism. And I've just quickly defined sensibilities, which are the quality of being able to appreciate and respond to complex emotional or aesthetic influences. So sensitivity. What led to modernism? Modernism was the period approximately between 1890 and 1950. Look, it's really hard to directly say this was the year it started, this is the year it finished. There were still some writers writing after 1950 who could still be considered modernist writers, and their writing has characteristics of modernism. The development of modern industrialised societies, the rapid growth of cities, the horrors of two world wars, gender, class and race struggles shaped modernism. This period marked a loss of faith in God, government and human goodness. The movement away from organised religion resulted in a greater focus on the individual.
I think it was related to the First World War, and I think it was still more related to the mood of depression which followed the First World War. I mean, it very much related to things like the effects of the inflation in Germany, starvation in Austria, revolutions in Hungary and Russia and so on.
It is a poem about fracture, it's a poem about dislocation after the First World War. It's a terrifying poem because it's inside the head of a society, almost a world, which has gone slightly mad. I mean, we can't underestimate the effects of the First World War, and they're not just outside effects, they're inside effects. I mean, people's consciousnesses were shattered and changed forever by what happened in the First World War. And Eliot was the first poet to take all of that in all its chaos and all its fragmentation and say, I can write about this, and here it is.
Some of the famous modernist authors were James Joyce, William Faulkner, Joseph Conrad and Virginia Woolf. Now look, there are lots more, and my apologies to the ones that I've missed out. Again, a small sample of modernist poets, and there are some other great ones. T.S. Eliot, who we're going to look at quite a bit in this video, Ezra Pound, W.H. Auden and Robert Frost. T.S. Eliot said that modernist literature is a way of controlling, of ordering, of giving shape and significance to the immense panorama of futile anarchy which is contemporary history. It is, I seriously believe, a step towards making the modern world possible for art. And this was something that he wrote in a review of Ulysses by James Joyce. I've gone through some of the characteristics of modernist literature in dot points. Now, look, some modernist literature has lots of these things, some only has a few. So keep your eye out for them. The first one is the radical disruption of linear flow of narrative. 2. Modernists explored individual consciousness rather than narrative. The focus was introspective, so internal. 3. Modernists made language central to artistic exploration. 4. There was a focus on the individual and his alienation and confusion. So again, I've given a few definitions: introspective, inward-looking, self-analyzing, alienation, isolation, detachment. So they're great words for modernism. 6. Modernists had an interest in rhythm and fragments of everyday language. And 7. Heavy use of symbolism and setting. So again, as I said before, keep an eye out for those 7 features as you're reading something from between the 1890s to the 1950s, and try and work out, do you think it's fitting under the banner of modernist text? Stream of consciousness. Look, with stream of consciousness, you can really see how modernists were breaking the rules. Now, stream of consciousness writing is quite hard to read. It's a narrative device that is the written equivalent of a character's thought process. It is characterised by leaps in thought and a lack of some or all punctuation. So, examples of stream of consciousness writing are James Joyce Ulysses and T.S. Eliot's The Love Song of J. Alfred Prufrock, and we're going to look at both those, or parts of both those texts right now.
A quarter after, what an unearthly hour. I suppose they're just getting up in China now, combing out their pigtails for the day. We'll soon have the nuns ringing the Angelus. They've nobody coming in to spoil their sleep except an odd priest or two for his night office. The alarm clock next door, cockshell, clattering the brains out of itself. Let me see if I can doze off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What kind of flowers are those they invented, like the stars? The wallpaper in Lombard Street was much nicer. The apron he gave me was like that. Something. I only wore it twice. Better lower this lamp and try again, so as I can get up early.
Let us go through certain half-deserted streets, the muttering retreats of restless nights in one-night cheap hotels, and sawdust restaurants with oyster shells. Streets that follow like a tedious argument of insidious intent, to lead you to an overwhelming question. Oh, do not ask what is it. Let us go and make our visit. In the room the women come and go, talking of Michelangelo. The yellow fog that rubs its back on the window panes, the yellow smoke that rubs its muzzle on the window panes, licked its tongue into the corners of the evening, lingered upon the pools that stood in drains, let fall upon its back the soot that falls from chimneys, slipped by the terrace, made a sudden leap, and seeing that it was a soft October night, curled once about the house and fell asleep. And indeed there will be time for the yellow smoke that slides along the street, rubbing its back upon the window panes. There will be time to prepare a face, to meet the faces that you meet. There will be time to murder and create, and time for all the works and days of hands that lift and drop a question on your plate. Time for you and time for me, and time yet for 100 indecisions, and for 100 visions and revisions before a taking of toast and tea.
Interior monologue is often used interchangeably with stream of consciousness. However, there are subtle differences. Interior monologue may be restricted to an organised presentation of a character's rational thoughts. It does not necessarily mingle these thoughts with impressions and perceptions, stream of consciousness, nor does it necessarily violate the norms of grammar or logic. And look, to be honest, this makes interior monologue much easier to read than pure stream of consciousness. Great, well, thanks for sticking with me through to the end of the lesson. Just to recap the key points, although it's impossible to define the exact years when modernism started and finished, it was roughly between 1890 and 1950, which is a really turbulent time in history with revolutions and wars and all sorts of things going on. Modernistic authors presented a pessimistic picture of society in decay. The modernist period marked a loss of faith in God, government, and human goodness, and many modernist authors and poets experimented with the structural flow of narrative. There was a focus on the individual and his alienation and confusion in modernism. Modernists had an interest in rhythm and fragments of everyday language. Stream of consciousness is a narrative device that is the written equivalent of a character's thought process. It is characterised by leaps in thought and a lack of some or all punctuation. Interior monologue is slightly different. It is much easier to read. And you've made it. Look, thank you so much for watching and listening. If you did enjoy the video and you would like to subscribe, we will be bringing out more of the same stuff, which will hopefully be interesting and educational. So just click on the button at the bottom right, and that's it. Thank you so much for watching.